Hello LinkedIners, YouTubers and job seekers. So you might have seen something doing the rounds called Open to Work, new from LinkedIn, something to stick on your profile, something to go around your picture as well. Just going to cover off some details around where this is going to be useful and how it can help you out. Right, first thing I need to say is I want to put a big shout out and a thank you to Sam Rawls for bringing this to my attention. Something that's popped up yesterday from LinkedIn. Sam, as I understand it, was wondering about what value it could bring to her profile or other people that might be starting to look for jobs right now. The principle is pretty clear. It's to help those that are unfortunately out of work at the moment to stand out in search results, and it puts a little circle around your profile picture with the hashtag Open to Work, and then you also put that into your profile somewhere, be it the summary, or probably best to put it just below the box below your name so that it shows up in search results. And where that's going to help you stand out is on urgent to hire or contract vacancies, especially when you're looking at recruiters or talent acquisition people and what we're looking for. It makes it really clear that you're going to be available at short notice. So those are the two markets I think it's going to really be beneficial for. Where it's going to have more limited impact is probably on the permanent side, and I'll cover that a bit to give you a bit more detail behind that. In addition to this, it also puts a notification out to your network to let them know that you've made that update. So it's going to drive people to your profile. You're going to get a spike in views, which could lead to interest potentially. But also off the back of that, there's going to be hidden vacancies arising from that. And what I mean by that is firms that are either in the hiring sign-off process and people within your network that are within those businesses that are aware of these sign-offs coming through, as well as other firms perhaps that just are doing internal stuff yet and haven't put it out to external market. So those people in your network, especially if you've got a good network made up with former colleagues that know you, may well reach out and let you know that obviously this is in the pipeline, and perhaps help you out with a referral to get into those organisations. So it could be a really useful, really beneficial tool there. Where I think it's going to be more or less useful rather is actually around the permanent side, and the reason being is the attitudinal shift that we're experiencing with those firms that are hiring. A couple of things to sort of relate back to. In the financial crisis, which I had the misfortune I guess of working through then, it was a very challenging time like it is now. Hiring attitudes shifted. We had this view, it was really quite talent short in 2006, early 2007, and businesses effectively lowered the bar that they would set for individuals to meet their grade. So it would go to like a 6 out of 10, and they'd say we could train the gap, it's fine, because there just wasn't so much choice. And then 2008, 2009 kicks in, and ultimately that choice balance switched. It became an employer favoured market. Now it's in that position right now. You'll see that by the volume of applications, certainly if you're applying for stuff right now. And so with employers spoilt for choice, their bars go up. And so things that were little niggles or things they would overlook now become bigger deals because they've just got the choice to be able to make that with. And so ultimately it's things like age discrimination. See the video I did last week on that and some of the challenges there. It's still very much prevalent. Education, certainly with certain roles like data science or stuff like that, they can raise that bar up in terms of the sort of universities you come from, the grades you've got, and also how far back they go, so whether they start looking at A-levels and stuff like that as well to ensure there's a consistency there. We also see it with other things like career movement, so if there's too much moving around going on, certainly with people wanting to move contract to perm, because the choice is there, the employers raise that bar and dismiss a lot of people that are actually very good, very talented. It's just there's been circumstantial reasons as to why these movements have happened. So it becomes a challenge. So I don't think the hashtag Open to Work is really going to necessarily help or make a big difference on the perm side, because it's going to come down to experience, credibility, track record and performance of you as an individual. That's what's going to impress them, that's what's going to get the door open, and that's what's going to get you shortlisted to interview. So, but yeah, on the contract side, on the stuff that's really urgent, it's going to be a different matter, and that is really going to be beneficial along with your network piece. So if you are out of work, at it, it's only going to be a benefit in that respect. It does lead me on to a bit of a story about a role I was dealing with for quite a big brand employer. There was a retained piece of work. There's actually a couple of retained assignments. And in the original briefing, I was given the example of what they wanted to see around how a retained search was handled by a recruiter. They'd had an HRD, Human Resources Director vacancy, that was briefed out to a retained agency. And the retained agency turned around a shortlist for them in 48 hours from briefing, with people that effectively met the mark, but 9 out of 10 within their submitted list were immediately available. And they shot down the agency, saying that these clearly aren't the best on the market or in the market, and we want the best in the market because the best don't sit immediately available. What they didn't take into account is the financial crisis led to a lot of businesses collapsing. I had no fault of the HRDs that were in that list. Didn't take into account really any of the detail around why and what's the story behind this for each individual. They just focused on the fact that 9 out of 10 of the people were immediately available. And that's pretty poor. That's pretty bad practice. But they just went to the recruitment agency saying, you clearly haven't bothered doing your work properly because we expect the best of the best to come with a notice period. And at the more senior levels, you do see that kind of snobbiness kick through when you do have businesses that have got the budgets and the ambition and the expectation that we want the best. So they have this perception that the best never get released from businesses. And that is kind of crazy because, yeah, life is complicated, business is complicated, and in this kind of environment there's many businesses that have unfortunately been negatively affected through no fault of their own. So it's nothing to do with the individual's performance or their abilities. So it's kind of short-sighted. But harps back to what I'm talking about in terms of bars being raised for the permanent recruitment side. And that is really all those little niggles that employers have around permanent hiring, even in a good market, that they overlook, are now going to be things that they're going to look much more critically about. So if you're not explaining gaps or reasons for change in your CV and making it make sense so the story makes sense, and you're not just someone who's jumped ship for money quickly between jobs, which is always the one that's most frowned upon, you need to really explain an example why those moves happened, to try to stop those alarm bells going off with the hiring managers to give you the best opportunity to stand out. When this might differ in the perm market is perhaps where hiring's a little more altruistic and you see hiring managers being, I suppose, really connected with the plight and challenges that are out there. And I have seen evidence of that already. Certainly there was somebody I reached out to earlier this week, hiring for a bunch of roles into her new business, and she's a marketing director, and she's building a team around her. And the first thing she put out was to say, any of my former colleagues at X company, please reach out to me, because she was very much aware that that company unfortunately had gone under and was looking to save as many people as she could. She'd worked with them before, she liked them, and you saw the same thing with Thomas Cook. When Thomas Cook went under, you had all of the travel companies coming out with a come to us, and specifically prioritising Thomas Cook staff for their opportunities above the rest of the market. What I think we need in these times is more of that attitude towards hiring, less of the elitism mentality that's coming through. Sure, every line manager wants to have the best team out there, but some of the best, most highest performing teams that I've ever come across are also the most diverse in nature. Some of the worst performing teams, ironically, in a small number of instances, have been those where they focus purely on that ridiculously high bar and then hire carbon copies of each person coming into the same thing. And what they ended up generating was a business of thinkers, not a business of doers. And that team never actually delivered any change. They just thought really well about the strategies they should employ for change. But without the diversity of people that were happy to roll their sleeves up and do delivery, nothing got done. And so, ironically, some of these businesses I'm talking about are dot-coms, early 2000, really big shooting star dot-coms, that sparked off smaller startups within them. And those smaller startups had different hiring mentalities, and they hired and celebrated diversity and difference. And those smaller startups overtook their parent companies and now are much bigger, much more profitable entities because they maintain that diversity in their hiring. I think right now, with choice, becomes the opportunity to hire or think you can hire pure elite. And there's nothing to say that pure elite isn't bad. Or it's good. It's indifferent in regards to performance output if you don't have that diversity that's able to give you different points of view, different people's perceptions, bring different backgrounds into it, that's ultimately then going to give you a more balanced, more rounded view, and have people that are really happy doing the thinking as well as people happy doing the delivery, to give you that really good balance within your team. So if you are hiring right now, I implore you to please think about diversity in your team. Don't follow this certain crowd I'm seeing of people that are just going after elitism only, and try to celebrate the differences that people can bring and the value that can bring to your organisation. So again, thanks for watching, everybody. Like always, we've got content pretty regularly coming out covering a multitude of different elements, but if there are things you want us to give a bit of a view on, or perhaps give some additional background or insight around, just drop us a comment or ping me a note. My email's on the bottom here. Happy to help out however I can. Stay safe, everyone, and best of luck.